like the text, it's not like smooth because I ripped off my press-ons. But I've been putting this like keratin treatment thing as like a base coat to kind of help treat the nail, I guess. But yeah, I'm wearing this Sally Hansen one called Silk Is. You can't see that. I don't know what I'm trying. It's cute. It's like a shimmery pearl. And I like it. I also got this shade. This green has been like my obsession these days. Some may say it's like a poopy green, like a geese poop. But you know what? I love it. And then I also got... where did it go? I also got this color, which is really nice. It's like a grayish blue. So yeah, okay, anyway, let's get to the books, guys. So it's November, and it's Nonfiction November. I actually haven't read any as of yet, so hopefully I'll at least read one before the month is over. But I have 6 nonfiction recommendations here. So I made a video showing like my absolute favorite nonfiction books. I made that video a couple months back, so I have not included any of those books in this video, but I will link that video in the description in case you want more recs or you're just curious. So yeah, let's jump right in with the first one. I will say, if you guys have watched my videos like for a while, these will probably all be familiar to you, but yeah, so the first one I have here is Good Morning Monster by Catherine Gildiner. A therapist shares 5 heroic stories of emotional recovery. Good Morning Monster. Oh, let's go back a little. Okay. So yeah, as the little subtitle says, it is a therapist talking about 5 of her patients. So she is talking about, she's like retired when she's writing this, but she was a clinical psychologist for like many decades, and she's talking about 5 of her most like memorable patients, all different types of people. Among them, so it says, among them a successful first-generation Chinese immigrant musician, a young woman whose father abandoned her at age 9 with her younger siblings, a glamorous workaholic whose narcissistic, negligent mother greeted her each morning of her childhood with Good Morning Monster. But yeah, all 5 of these people are like going through it, like emotionally, psychologically struggling. They all have like very traumatic pasts, and like through their stories, patients. I don't know, I was gonna say like cases. They're not cases, but you know, just the kind of lives these people went through, like, and how they like persevered and stuff. So yeah, this is a good one. Okay. Let's on a more lighthearted note, let's go to Everything I Know About Love by Dolly Alderton. Everything I know. Dolly Alderton also writes fiction, but this is her nonfiction memoir. is a very personal, very reflective memoir about her life, but also life in general, and kind of about anxiety and a lot about motherhood, and kind of how fleeting life is. So 80s. Oh, sorry. In the 80s. And she talks about that, like, how his death hit him. And, yeah, it's so good. It really makes you feel nostalgic for a place and a time that you were not in. Like, I was not alive in the 60s. My parents weren't even alive in the 60s, you know. My parents were born, like, in the late 60s. Like, I've been to New York one time. And, yeah, but, like, you know how books that take place in New York are, like, a favorite of a lot of people? Like, fictional books, because it just has that atmosphere and that vibe. Like, I personally also love books that take place in New York, but this book has that vibe, and it was like a real, you know, for Patti Smith. So yeah, it's just so good, and it's interspersed with a lot of like art, their own like art and photographs. Let me find one. I think this is Patty and Robert when they were children. This is like, I don't know what that is, like an art piece. I'm trying to find like a photo of them when they're older. Oh. This is in 1974. So, yeah. I love this book. Okay, and the last book, also a memoir, also so good. That is A Man of Two Faces by Viet Thanh Nguyen. sketches on